Hi, my name is Ethan. I'm 22 years old, and this happened to me last fall when I was working the closing shift at a small grocery store just outside my town. At the time, I really needed the job. I was behind on rent, I'd dropped out of college a few months earlier, and I was trying not to let my family know how bad things had gotten. My uncle knew the owner of this little place called Marlo's Market, and he got me in. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't care. I told myself work was work, and if it helped me stay afloat for another month, then that was enough. During the day, the store was completely normal. It was small, kind of old, and had that tired feeling a lot of family-owned places have. The same regular customers came in almost every day. Older people bought soup and bread. Moms came in after school with their kids. Guys on lunch break bought energy drinks and chips. It wasn't a creepy place in the daytime. It was just a grocery store. At night, though, it felt like a different building. I noticed that on my first shift. Once the sun went down and the store started emptying out, everything changed. The fluorescent lights overhead didn't just hum. They buzzed like angry insects. The refrigerators made this deep mechanical droning sound that seemed to come from the floor itself. The freezer fans clicked and rattled like something trapped in metal. And every few minutes, the old speaker system overhead would crackle like somebody was about to make an announcement, but then nothing would come through. It was never loud enough to make anyone else react, just enough to make me look up. The aisles in the back of the store were the worst. The front area still felt connected to the outside world because of the windows and registers and the little bit of traffic from the road. But the farther back you walked, the more cut off it felt. The shelves got taller, the lights got dimmer. The noise from outside disappeared completely. It felt like walking into somewhere sealed off. And there was one aisle that bothered me more than the others, aisle 9. I don't know why at first. It just felt wrong. It was all canned goods, cleaning supplies, paper towels, boring stuff like that. Nothing about it should have stood out. But it was in the far back corner where one of the overhead lights kept flickering on and off. And every time I had to walk down it, I got this feeling in my stomach that I was interrupting something, like I wasn't supposed to be there. The first time I mentioned it, my manager, Denise, just laughed. She was in her 40s, always looked exhausted, always had a coffee in one hand and a pen tucked behind one ear. She was the kind of person who acted like nothing bothered her, even when something clearly did. I said, "Does the back corner always feel this creepy at night?" And she gave me this half smile and said, "You'll get used to it." But the way she said it didn't make me feel better. It made me feel like she was trying to end the conversation. The first 2 closing shifts I worked were uncomfortable, but nothing happened. We closed at 11, then one of us stayed behind for another hour or so to finish up, facing the shelves, sweeping, checking the side door, making sure the freezer doors were shut, locking everything up, and setting the alarm. Since I was the new guy, I was the one stuck doing all the late stuff. I hated it, but I needed the money, so I kept quiet. Then my 3rd closing shift came. That night started off normal. I remember it had been raining earlier, and people kept dragging water into the store on their shoes. Around 10:30, the place was mostly empty. A couple bought cat food and frozen dinners. An older man stood by the lottery machine for 10 minutes, scratching tickets with this weirdly intense expression, like his life depended on it. Then by 11, the last customers were gone, and the whole store felt like it exhaled. Luis was there with me that night. He worked stock. Quiet guy, maybe a few years older than me. Didn't talk much unless you talked first. At around 11:15, Denise finished counting the drawers and grabbed her purse. Then she looked at me and said, "You good to close alone tonight?" I remember staring at her for a second because I didn't even realize that was the plan. I said, "Alone?" She nodded like it was no big deal. "Luis has to go home. I already did most of the paperwork. Just straighten up the back shelves, kill the aisle lights, check the side entrance, then lock it up." I looked at Luis, hoping he'd say something, but he just avoided eye contact and kept wiping down the counter by the register. I asked,
How long will that take? 45 minutes, maybe an hour if you're slow. Then, as casually as if she were reminding me to turn off the coffee maker, Denise said, "Just don't spend too much time by aisle 9 if the light starts acting up." Luis gave this short, weird laugh, but it sounded nervous, not amused. Nervous. I looked at both of them and said, "What does that mean?" Denise waved it off immediately. "Nothing, old store joke." I didn't laugh, neither did Luis. Then they left. I can still remember standing there at the front of the store after the door shut behind them. It's hard to explain, but the second I realized I was the only person in that building, the whole atmosphere changed. Every little sound became sharper. The hum of the refrigerators, the clicking from the lights, the settling of shelves. Even my own breathing sounded too loud. I started with the easy stuff because I didn't want to go to the back yet. I wiped down the conveyor belt, picked up trash from the front aisle, straightened gum and candy bars near the register. I kept glancing up every time the speaker crackled overhead. At around 11:40, I was in the dairy section when I heard something fall in the back.
It was definitely metal. It hit the tile hard and rolled. I froze. Then I heard it spinning in a slow circle, the sound getting quieter and quieter. At first, I just stood there listening. I remember hoping that if I waited long enough, I'd hear something else that made sense. Another can falling, a shelf shifting, a person laughing, something normal. But all I heard was silence. Finally, I called out, "Hello?" My voice sounded weak, like it was being swallowed by the store. No answer. I should have left it alone, but I told myself it was probably just a can that had rolled off a bad shelf, so I walked toward the back, slowly, trying to act like I wasn't scared. When I reached the end of aisle 8 and looked into aisle 9, there was a single can of tomato soup spinning in the middle of the floor. No one around it, no damaged shelf, no cardboard tray tipped over, just one can, gently spinning under that flickering light. I stood there staring at it long enough to feel stupid. Then I actually laughed under my breath, like that would make it less unsettling. I went in, picked it up, and as soon as I stepped fully into the aisle, I noticed the temperature change. The air was freezing. Not cool, not air-conditioned, freezing. It felt wet too, somehow, like basement cold, like the kind of cold that goes through your clothes instead of just sitting on your skin. I put the can back on the shelf and got out of there as fast as I could without actually running. The second I stepped back into the cross aisle, the temperature felt normal again. I remember standing there, heart pounding, staring into aisle 9 and telling myself I was being ridiculous, but I couldn't shake it. A little after midnight, I went to the back wall near the stock room to start shutting off some of the aisle lights. The store didn't go pitch black, but it got dim enough that the shelves started looking like dark shapes instead of rows. The freezer signs threw off this pale blue glow, and the red exit sign at the back looked way brighter than it should have. That's when the speaker system clicked on again. Not the usual crackle, a full click, like someone had pressed the button to talk, then static, then a voice, low, distorted, dragging through the speaker like it had to force itself through, and it said my name, Ethan. I went completely still. I actually felt the hair on my arms stand up. For a second, I couldn't move at all. I just stared up at the speaker over my head, trying to convince myself it wasn't what I thought it was. Maybe Denise had come back. Maybe Luis was outside messing with me somehow. Maybe there was some old recorded announcement I didn't know about. Then the speaker clicked again. Ethan, come to aisle 9. I dropped the flashlight I was holding. It hit the floor and bounced under a shelf. My chest got tight so fast it felt like I'd been punched. I pulled out my phone and called Denise immediately. Straight to voicemail. I called Luis. Nothing. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. And then,
From the back of the store, I heard the sound of a shopping cart moving. Not fast, slow. One squeaky wheel, metal rattling lightly. Push, pause, push. That sound was worse than hearing my name, because a voice could have been a glitch, a prank, a bad speaker. But a shopping cart meant movement. It meant something was back there. I wish I could say I ran right away, but fear does weird things to you. Instead of making me smart, it made me curious. Or maybe not curious. Maybe it made me desperate to prove to myself there was a normal explanation. So I walked toward the sound. I remember every step feeling wrong, like something inside me was telling me to stop, but my body kept going anyway. When I got close to aisle 9, I stopped at the corner and listened. The cart squeaked once, then stopped. I leaned just enough to look. There was an old store cart halfway down the aisle. It was rocking slightly, like it had just been pushed and let go. And at the far end of the aisle, where the light kept flickering, there was a shape, a person-shaped outline. Too tall, too still. Every time the light flashed, I saw a little more of it. A shoulder, the side of a head, arms hanging strangely low. Then darkness again. Then another flicker. It was wearing the same dark green Marlo's Market shirt I had on. I whispered, "Who's there?" Nothing. Then the overhead speaker burst to life again with a shriek of static, so loud I flinched. And the voice said, much clearer this time, "You left me here." I took a step back so quickly I slammed into the shelf behind me. A couple cans fell and hit the floor. The shopping cart slammed over, metal crashing against tile. The speaker system screamed with static above me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I got to the front doors, grabbed the handle, and pulled. They wouldn't open. I fumbled with the lock, almost crying from panic, but it wouldn't budge. It felt jammed, completely jammed. And that was the moment the fear really became something else. Not just fear, helplessness. That sick, hollow feeling when your body understands before your mind does that you may not be getting out. I backed away from the doors, and the lights in the store went out. All of them. Every aisle. Every freezer sign. Everything. 1 second, I could still see shapes and reflections and shelves. The next second, it was all gone. The only light left was the red exit sign glowing in the back, and a little orange spill from the parking lot outside the front windows. Then I heard footsteps. Slow footsteps, coming from the back of the store, dragging a little, uneven. I dropped behind the customer service desk and crouched there, trying not to make a sound. My phone was still in my hand, lighting up my fingers faintly, and I had to force myself to dim the screen. The footsteps kept coming. Step, pause, step, step, pause, closer. The overhead speaker above me hissed softly with static, and then the voice came through again, but this time it wasn't talking to me. It sounded like it was remembering something.
I was closing, alone. I covered my mouth with my hand because I was afraid it would hear me breathing. Then the voice said, "I heard my name from the back." The footsteps stopped. Somewhere close. Too close. And then the speaker whispered, "Nobody came." My phone suddenly lit up with an incoming call, and I almost dropped it. "Denise." I answered so fast I nearly made noise doing it. I whispered, "Denise, someone's in the store." She cut me off immediately. "Listen to me. Do not answer if it talks to you." My whole body went cold. I said, "What are you talking about?" Her voice was shaking, actually shaking. "Get out, right now." "I can't. The doors won't open." There was a silence on the line. Then she said something so quiet I almost didn't hear it. It only happens when someone closes alone. I felt sick. I said, "What only happens?" But before she could answer, the call filled with static. Then I heard something that felt like all the air left my lungs at once. A whisper right behind me. Not from the phone, not from the speaker. Right behind me. Ethan. I turned, and there he was, standing just beyond the customer service desk in the dark. Green store shirt, black apron, skin so pale it almost looked gray. His face looked wrong, like the features weren't sitting where they were supposed to, like someone had tried to remember a human face from memory and gotten parts of it wrong. His eyes looked black in the dark, not empty, not hollow, just black. There was a name tag on his chest. I could barely make it out, but I saw enough to know it was a store tag. He lifted one hand slowly and pointed toward the back of the store, toward aisle 9. Then he said, in this awful layered voice that sounded like more than one person talking through the same mouth, "You should have come." I screamed. I couldn't help it. It just ripped out of me. I threw my phone at him and it struck his shoulder, or maybe passed through. I honestly don't know, because the moment it hit, the emergency lights came on and flooded the store in dim red light, and he was gone. Just gone. I didn't stop to think. I climbed over the side of the desk, nearly fell, grabbed the emergency latch at the door and pulled with everything I had. This time the door opened. I stumbled out into the parking lot so hard I hit the pavement on my hands and knees. I remember the cold, wet concrete. I remember gagging because I couldn't catch my breath. I remember looking back at the store and seeing the red glow of the emergency lights through the windows and expecting to see someone standing inside. A few minutes later, Denise's car flew into the lot. She got out and ran over to me, and the first thing she asked wasn't, "Are you okay?" It was, "What did you see?" That made me feel even worse, because it meant she already knew. When I finally told her, she just stood there with this look on her face that I still think about. It wasn't surprise, it was guilt. She helped me into a car and locked the doors. I asked her who he was. For a while, she just stared through the windshield. Then she said his name was Martin. He had worked there years earlier. Same shift, same routine, same closing duties. One winter night, he called the owner twice after closing because he said he could hear somebody in the store with him. Nobody came. The next morning, they found him dead in aisle 9. Officially, it was a heart attack, but Denise told me that when they found him, every can on both sides of the aisle had been pulled off the shelves and stacked in a circle around his body, and the microphone for the store intercom had been ripped from the manager's office wall. I asked her why she never told me any of that, and I swear I have never heard someone sound so ashamed in my life as when she answered me. She said, "Because I needed someone to cover closing." I quit the next morning. I didn't even go back inside. I put my apron and name tag in a plastic bag, left it outside the front entrance before sunrise, and drove away. A week later, Luis texted me. He asked if what Denise said was true. I asked him what he meant. He told me Denise had found my flashlight in aisle 9 after I left that night. Not under the shelf where I dropped it, not kicked into a corner, standing upright in the middle of the aisle, turned on, pointing at the exact spot where Martin had died. I blocked his number after that because I didn't want to hear anything else about that place. I wanted to pretend that it never happened. I wanted to go back to being the person I was before that night. But I don't think you really go back after something like that. Because now every grocery store feels wrong at night. Every speaker crackle makes my chest tighten. Every flickering fluorescent light makes me think of that aisle. And the worst part is, I don't think whatever was there stayed there. About a month after I quit, I was in a completely different grocery store across town. Bigger place, bright lights, more people. Nothing like Marlo's. I was in the frozen section getting a pizza when the overhead speaker crackled. I looked up automatically. Then, through the static, I heard a voice. Low, distorted, familiar. It said, "Clean up, aisle 9. I stood there, frozen. That store even had an aisle 9. I dropped my basket and walked straight out. So yeah, my name is Ethan. I'm 22 years old, and I still don't know what was waiting for me in that store that night. All I know is that it knew my name, and sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep, right on the edge of dreaming, I hear that speaker click on in the dark, and a voice says, very softly, like it's standing right beside my bed, "Come to aisle 9.